What's up? How you doing? It's Slingermonger. This is a 590 boost from Benchmade. It's assisted, right? It's Benchmade assisted axis lock, and it's called the Boost. Boost. Who is coming up with these names this year for 2017 for Benchmade? They've got the Freak, the Boost, the Azaria. You know what I mean? What? It's great. I'm not complaining. I mean, I actually think they're fantastic. I love these names. They're original as hell. They're great. I think it's awesome. This knife itself is better than the Barrage. I will state that flat up off the bat. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, you know I'm obsessed with the Griptilian, right? So when they came out with the Freak, they changed the construction. It's not nearly as robust of a design. There's just enough changes in it to where I don't think it's a Griptilian. It doesn't quite fit into that class. This knife is not like that. This is actually a Barrage as far as I see it. The only major differences they've made is the aesthetic changes. Well, not necessarily aesthetic, but you know they've made some changes with the blade. They've upgraded the blade steel, and they've completely changed around the handle. Now the handle can go either way, right? You could consider this a good change or a bad change. I consider it a good change because, well, I consider it a good change as far as this specific knife, right? This specific knife. But it leads me into a theory with Benchmade. Because if you're familiar with a lot of Benchmade designs, right? I'm going to throw up a lineup of knives here. That's a Benchmade 551 Griptilian. That's a 583 Barrage 707 sequel. It's a Hunt. I can't even remember. No, it's a Bone Collector. And this is an 810 Contigo. And you notice they're all kind of got that reminiscent shape. They're all swollen at the bottom. It's kind of got that teardrop-esque shape effect, cutting into a finger choil and then widening back up around the actual neck of the knife. There's all of this ergonomic design. There's that flowing aspect, right? And Benchmade has been famous for this. A lot of their models, not all of them, but a lot of them have featured that kind of design aspect, right? The Barrage was no different. It was still along those lines, right? And what they've done with the Freak and the Boost here is take these knives away from that. They've taken the design and gone more towards something like this is actually very reminiscent to me of the Protagonist handle. If you're familiar with the Protagonist that they came out with last year, this is much more reminiscent of that, especially with the dual barometer materials, the actual ergonomics, though, just the way that it's shaped in general. This does feel more like that, but with that said, this is an improvement over the Barrage. You notice how they've actually got this backspacer here crowned a little bit. It's sticking up, it's just rounded off just a tiny bit, and it feels fantastic. Little subtle changes like that, opposed to this, it's a 583. The 580 is the one with the spear point, but you notice here, this is the Tonto. This is flat, and it's a harder plastic material. That backspacer in there is the same material as these scales, which is actually the same material as this here. But because it's got that rubber on it, because it's a solid piece, it's more rounded off. You notice how round this knife is. It's sloped down in both areas here, and then it's got that rounding effect here from the protrusion of the actual backspacer. That isn't the case with the Barrage. The Barrage is much more squared off. You notice it's flat on both sides, it's flat on the back. So there's much more ergonomic aspects to this knife here. It feels better in the hand, and it really, really does. It doesn't have that teardrop effect because you get something when you hold these knives. There's a reason that they made so many knives with this kind of design of the handle. There's so many, and I'm such a big fan of them. There's a reason I really like this design. But with that, this is more comfortable. That's a better working grip. I still think that has more positive aspects as far as use, but it doesn't feel as comfortable. You can't hold it for as long. You can't squeeze it for as long without your hand being fatigued. And this knife has repaired that. I've been carrying this one around for about a week. I've done a lot of carving with it. This is something that I'm going to use for harder tasks. You notice I did take the deep carry pocket clip off of it. It did come out of the box with a deep carry pocket clip. I put a standard Griptilian pocket clip on it because some knives go good with a deep carry clip, some knives don't. This knife out of the box, for me anyways, this knife out of the box came okay, did have a decently sharp edge on it, but one thing I want to show you guys it's 2017, right? And if you're familiar with Benchmade, look at the secondary or the actual edge grind, right? That actual edge bevel. See the consistency of it widens out just a slight bit up at the tip, but it's not bad, okay? Benchmade has had a problem with their finishing grind, their edge grind for years now. And you see how thick it is there, right? It widens up. It's almost like a distal taper. It's getting wider and wider and wider until this point here where you can see there's this bulge in the actual grind. And then it's probably, I don't know, I would say 20 degrees on this side, 15 degrees on this side, something like that, all the way up here towards the tip. So Benchmade, even in 2017, they're still not doing a very good job with their edge grind. That's not to say that it wasn't sharp. All of the deformation, you can see a little bit of rolling on there. I've got a little bit of work done to this thing. I stropped it up every day, but I haven't actually sharpened it yet. Still got a factory edge on it. So it did come sharp. It came with a great working edge, but nothing that's going to be easy to resharpen. You know, I mean, I'm going to have to, if I want to sharpen this on a V-jig, I'm going to have to completely reprofile it just to get that V-ground, you know, a proper edge back on it so I can just, you know, tune it up on a Spyderco Sharp Maker. Otherwise, I'm going to have to reprofile this entire thing. So that's really something that Benchmade does need to work on. You notice that this is number 10 out of 1,000 first production run as well. Something I didn't used to like carrying first production knives, but more recently I've started getting into a little bit more exclusive, a little bit more expensive knives. And so the first production run I'm definitely going to keep. I'm never going to sell this thing. It's always going to have a spot in my collection, but I'm going to use it. You know, I have been using my first production knives recently. So I think this boost is definitely an improvement over the barrage. There's no real design. There's no real design aspect changes here. It is a skeletonized frame, but it's a full milled out frame. The lock has no changes except for the fact, actually, I do want to mention that one. The lock, you notice, actually protrudes just a tiny bit more. They're sitting at the same angle. They're both kind of sitting at like a backwards angle, and the back is further into the frame than the front of the button itself, right? But the actual boost here is protruding more. I can actually feel a little bit of a transition there. When in this one, there's no transition. It's just running up onto that jimping. You just run up onto the jimping. This one here, there is actually a transition to the button. And the way this lock works is if you push it forward, it doesn't actually move. You have to push it down and then slide it forward. I can get it to work. You can see it'll actually slide forward there. That's the same in the reverse, the lock and the open position. And so having it protruding just that little bit actually is a very large improvement over this, because I have to stick my finger in and get the actual lock further down inside the scales. And so I'm using the fat of my finger to actually engage this lock here. This lock here doesn't require that. This lock here sits flush. I don't know if you can see it, but to engage it actually rides flush with the frame. And so the lock on this knife, I don't use my locks, I really don't, but the lock on the boost is a major improvement over the lock on the barrage. And it's the exact same mechanism. It hasn't changed. The parts actually might be interchangeable. But the way that it's designed is actually a major improvement, as well as I just love these little divots up front. I love the way that those are done. Reminds me of the 162 Bushcrafter from Benchmade. It's just got that little bit of, you can choke up on it, get a really nice working grip. I really like the way that this thing is done. Is this one a barrage killer? Yes, I don't think the 560 Freak is a Griptilian killer, but I definitely think that this 590 Boost is a barrage killer. Y'all have a good one.